Hey everyone, Jim and Chris back with another update. We wanted to talk today about the financials and the overall performa. Now, as you work with our property counselors, hopefully you're going through step by step with the performa. We're actually going to offer an additional webinar master series on understanding the performa because we want you guys to have the absolute best understanding of what you're getting into, the levers you can pull, and the projections that we make because this is important for your overall financial gains and well-being. One important subject that we did want to talk today about for the starting point of getting your property off on the right foot, but also knowing the commitment that it's going to take is something called stabilization. It's something that is more used in the commercial arena, but it's something that you need to understand now becoming an investor and building your own portfolio. Every investor faces what's called the stabilization period. And Chris, do you want to highlight and talk a little bit about what is stabilization and how does it work and tie into their portformas?
Sure, exactly. So when you buy a property, and you could be buying a property that just got built, or you could be buying an older property that needs renovation and repairs, and then you're going to lease it up after that. But anything that happens between the time that you purchase a property and until a time that the tenant goes in place is called stabilization. So that's a time period where you are either getting the property ready for a tenant to move in, or you're marketing that property for lease to a tenant. Well, during that time period, you've still got all the same expenses of the property. So you're going to have to pay the taxes, you're going to have to pay the insurance, you're going to have to pay the mortgage. And then once you get a tenant, you're going to have to pay a leasing fee. So you had to pay to get that tenant moved in and all the costs associated with acquiring that tenant for the property. And then you start to receive cash flow. So, that first, it could be 30 days, it could be 60 days. It really depends on how long it takes to lease up your property that you've got to account for that and set aside money for it. So set aside money for that stabilization period. Now, some of that happens automatically, so your bank, when you close on the property, is going to hold aside reserves for your insurance and taxes and all of those things that are going to be automatic, and they may take a first month's mortgage payment. Each bank's different, but you're going to have a lot of that's going to be kind of built in up front when you close on the property. But you still want to make sure that you've got some cash set aside. If we think a property is going to lease on average in 38 days, right? So I think that's our number right now is 38 days. Well, you could be better than the average, right? Your property could lease in 8 days, or you could be worse than the average and your property could lease in 68 days. So you really got to take into account the fact that you don't know where you're going to fall in that spectrum. Nobody does. It's not possible. So you just want to make sure that you're financially prepared to weather any sort of storm. And if it happens in 8 days, great, woohoo! You've just got extra money, sitting on the sideline, and you're well reserved for anything in the future. If it takes longer, you're not sweating it while you're waiting for that tenant to move into the property. So I think it's really just important to know that stabilization it's just a normal part of the real estate process, and it's a normal part of the investing process. It's not something to be scared about or upset about. It's just part of the process.
Something to plan for.
That's it.
And that's why we're bringing it up today. The understanding of the startup phase for any real estate project I've ever been in requires an additional investment in any property I've ever been involved in. And you see that come out in the overall longevity of the project and property itself. And when you start to plan and prepare and understand that, look, there will be a stabilization period. This capital will go into my initial investment, and I need to look long term with it. I think you're going to be more relaxed, you're going to be more confident, and you're going to be better prepared.
Yeah, and you might be sitting here looking at a property that is 30 days from completion and going to start the lease up process in that time period, or you might be looking at a property that just started construction and you're not going to close on for another 6 months. So you can't know what the market is going to look like at that point in time. So if you prepare for it, just put your mind at ease and let you just go about your business. And and then what happens. and we've seen we've seen both sides.
Yeah. And with stabilizing, the best areas to stabilize a property in are areas where they're finding population growth, economic growth, there's still good affordability, there's healthy supply and demand, and there's some sort of draw bringing them in. You guys know my 5 factors. Chris and I and the whole team still only will be building in areas that have those 5 fundamentals. And so we can't guarantee, like Chris said, an 8-day stabilization. But we do feel confident that as we continue to look and vet the markets very closely on a weekly basis, all 5 of those factors are still at our back, which is absolutely key, why we like the new construction and why we like Florida. So overall, we're going to be doing some more videos about talking about the performance, because I think sometimes we can look at that, it can be overwhelming, it can be scary, it can be confusing. But once you start to really understand the key numbers, how they work together, and the leverage you're going to be able to pull with a very, again, up and to the right approach, and nothing aggressive, very conservative, you're going to have, I think, more excitement for what lies ahead. So overall, we'll be talking to you again that soon, and it was great going over this with you today. Take care.
Have a good one, everybody.